This is a CTV News special presentation.
I'm ready to give everything for Canada.
It is time for a change and a new day for Canada.
Invest in our healthcare, expand pharmacare, lift people up.
I will be to be as strong a leader as I can.
A CTV News special presentation of the Federal Leaders Debate. Reporting live from Montreal, here is Vashi Kapelos.
Hi there, and welcome to our special coverage here on CTV News of the Federal Leaders Debate, the English language version, scheduled to take place in just 2 hours. I'm Vashi Kapelos, coming to you live tonight from Montreal, Quebec. We'll take a live look just outside the building behind me, which is where leaders are set to start arriving within about the next 30 minutes. They will filter in one by one before the debate ends up starting, which again begins at 7 o'clock Eastern. You can watch the whole thing live right here on CTV. We have a special and extended edition of Power Play to keep you up to date on everything you need to know about the debate, the stakes heading into tonight, because after all, we are only about 10 days away from Election Day on April 28th. To help me set the stage for this very exciting event, I am joined by what's commonly known as our Sunday strategy session, but we're on a Thursday, so just three of the greatest political strategists the country has. Next to me is Scott Reid, of course, the CTV News political analyst, as well as former communications director to former Liberal Prime Minister Paul Martin. Next to him, Kathleen Monk was communications director to the late Jack Layton. And Corey, tonight was Ontario Premier Doug Ford's campaign manager, as well as former communications director to Conservative Prime Minister Stephen Harper. Hi, everybody. Nice to see you here in Montreal. We are fresh off the French language debate last night into the English language debate. Before we look back, let's look ahead. How big of a deal potentially is tonight, Scott?
Well, really big. I mean, I think that people are dialed into this election in a way that they haven't been for a lot of election cycles. Trump, the tariff threat, the sort of existential sense of economic insecurity, I think makes people believe that they have to pay close attention to their leaders, their options. And this is probably going to be their best chance to actually connect directly with those folks. So it'll be interesting to watch which leaders decide to play to the cameras and try to focus on the audience, and which leaders decide to knock it around and really try to spar with their opponents.
Do you have the sense, Kathleen, that the campaigns feel tonight's debate is important?
Oh, for sure they do. Yeah, there's a lot of anxiety in all campaigns. I mean, listen, Mark Carney has been prime minister, even in politics, really, for 3 months. Canadians are just getting to know him. And we know that millions of Canadians tune into these debates. And so they will get to really meet him for the first time in English Canada. Pierre Poilievre, he's behind the polls. It's his chance to try to make it or break it. He's got to have some movement post-Easter weekend to really kind of change the polls if he's going to get momentum and clinch government by Election Day. And Jagmeet Singh's got to do the exact same thing that he did last night. He's got to bring the fire. He's got to bring the fight. He's got to show Canadians why he deserves to have a caucus strongly elected back into Parliament.
Let's talk a little bit about sort of last night and how it might inform tonight, Corey, because Jagmeet Singh did sort of, you can disagree with the way he did it, but he brought the fight versus the relative to the other candidates who all appeared to me like they were trying not to lose. How much do you think that is informed by the stakes for them or the language they were in? And do you think that might change tonight?
I don't think it'll change tonight. Singh is fighting for his political life tonight. If the polls hold the way they are, there's a very good chance that he will not be leader and that the NDP will not be an official party in the House of Commons. So when that's where you are today, there's only upside in taking some risks. It couldn't really get much worse than it is for them today. So I think you will see something similar from Singh tonight. I think he'll be taking risks. Poilievre's in a more interesting position because this is his last chance to really go out and try to change the dynamic in the race a little bit. But part of that dynamic is looking a little bit less scary to NDP voters that have abandoned Kathleen's party for the Liberals in an uncomfortable way, I think, for a lot of them. But I think he wants to bring some of the women home that were supporting him a few short months ago, who were being scared off or have a preference for Carney, maybe feeling like he looks a little too Trumpy. So I think he needs to, make things happen, but do it in a way where he doesn't come across as a bit of a jerk. So I think that's tough. It's tough to go in and throw haymakers and then also look like a nice guy. So he's got a tough assignment.
What's the assignment for Carney? Is it to just avoid getting punched? Because I thought it was very interesting last night the degree to which, or not, he did not try to engage Poilievre, and even vice versa. Like, there was very little one-on-one engagement outside of Singh trying to take each of them on.
Yeah, I thought two things about Carney. Not only did he not engage his opponents, he almost didn't engage some of the kind of the meta question of this election around Trump. Like, when the opportunities were there, he really just treated it as though it was an exam, and he was going to do his best job at answering the question that was posed to him and then move it along. I'll be interested tonight to see if he pursues a French plus strategy, right? Obviously, it's in his interest to be contained and calm. That's what's gotten him here. He looks like a prime minister. He feels like a guy who's got the shoulders to take on this challenge. But does he give himself license in his mother tongue to mix it up a little bit, to draw in Trump more often, to keep repeating what that core question and narrative is, and upon occasion to reply or even punch back to Poilievre? Because I do think Poilievre, he's got the toughest assignment tonight because he has to win voters by not being alarming.
Who he truly is. Yeah.
But he must tear down Carney's star from the tall sky, and that's a tough job.
Well, you could even see the sort of conflict there last night, whereas if you look back to the House, let's say, for example, where Pierre Poilievre's job was to do that to Justin Trudeau, there was like no hesitation whatsoever.
Yeah.
Last night, he was trying to temper kind of what Corey described he had to do with, at the same time, like, you have to create that division with the person that you're up against, and it was like a new way of doing it that we hadn't really seen before.
It's so interesting because both of the leaders who are, in neck and neck, Carney and Poilievre, almost have kind of the same thing to do. I think that Carney has to actually move from defense, which he was on last night in his, second language, not that strong, just trying to stay in his lane. And he actually has to move a little bit more into offense tonight. He's got to take on Poilievre. He's got to get his elbows up in some way. Whereas Poilievre has to do the opposite, right? He has to reel himself in his normal self, his characterological self of who he is, who he wants to be. He wants to be that fighter, and he basically wants to take down everybody. And if he shows that tonight, I think that even more women will leave him in droves.
But how do you not? I mean, you're trying to oppose the government's record, right? That's like a big part of your message. Like, how do you do that in flowery language?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, maybe by taking more shots at Trump. Maybe you do it by taking a shot at not at the other Canadians on the stage, but at the boogeyman in this election. The fundamental challenge that Poilievre has had is that the villain in this storyline is no longer a part of the story. It was Justin Trudeau for 2.5 years for him, and he was doing extremely well when he was combating that enemy. The enemy has changed for a lot of Canadians in this election. For some, it's still the Liberal government. They're very tired of the Liberal government, but not for enough to actually form a majority government, which is really what he needs to do if he wants to exercise power in the next parliament. So, who could you go after in a way that might not turn off some of the women that we're talking about, some of the people who have left the NDP? It would be going after Trump. The Trump factor, even though it's been so overarching in this campaign, wasn't that huge last night? There's a division of topics and everything, and to your point, it wasn't even invoked as much as you would have anticipated by Mr. Carney, who would see that in his favor. Do you think that changes in English?
That's what I'd be looking for from Carney. It's not so much that he goes on offense. I'm not sure I 100% agree. I think that with the comfort of his mother tongue, I think that what he can do is he can just be a little more encompassing and take every question back to that critical core question, positioning himself. He knows that Nick Nanos tells us that 51% of Canadians think he's the best prime minister, to 36% for Poilievre. So keep pounding people on, well, what's the issue that you need a prime minister for? Trump and tariffs and economic insecurity, and focus on that. And occasionally, I'd probably wave a little raw hamburger in the direction of Poilievre and see if he snaps out of it with those big, angry jaws he has.
Well, I honestly am very curious to see if there is more direct engagement, because I talked to some of the organizers, that was allowed for last night in the structure, and nobody seized on it except for Jagmeet saying, your thoughts on, I guess what I also found interesting was the degree to which Mr. Singh went after Mr. Poilievre versus Mr. Carney, which didn't happen until really the second half of the debate. Do you think there's more of that tonight, too? And what's the strategic imperative?
Because New Democrats do not want a conservative government elected. They do not like Pierre Poilievre.
Even if it's at their own the expense of themselves?
Oh, what they have to do, he has to show that he's taking on Pierre Poilievre. That's why New Democrats actually have a really tough fight, because they're battling everyone. They were battling the Bloc as well last night, So they have to take on Poilievre strongly. They almost have to, I always tell when I'm talking to New Democrats, you got to punch this way at conservatives and elbow back at liberals. Like, that's almost the percentage hit you want to do. And he does have to hit at Carney as well. He has to actually, point out their record, their failures, the fact that he's made decisions in the past, but his own personal investments that are questionable, and they may inform his decisions in the future. And so he's got to do that tonight and ensure he takes up space and actually makes the pitch to Canadians that you elect New Democrats to fight for the programs that you want in Parliament. And he's got to do that really strongly.
Last word for this round to you, Corey.
I would be making a very explicit case if I were Singh to people who are in a riding where you have an MP from the NDP today.
Yeah, for sure.
And I would say, look, I hear you, you don't want a conservative government. And for many of you, the option to have that not happen is actually voting Liberal. But there are a lot of people who are in a riding held by the NDP today, and your best option continues to be an NDP member of Parliament, and you should vote that way. That's basically the case that Marit Stiles made successfully in the recent Ontario election campaign, and despite having much lower support in the general polls, they were able to hold on to most of their incumbents.
But if I could just
very quickly, because I got to go.
More than half of the New Democratic caucus is fighting in ridings against conservatives, right? All of the West, Manitoba, Alberta, BC, and anything we can pick up in Saskatchewan will be fighting conservatives. And that's why Singh has to actually take the fight to Poilievre strongly.
Scott remains unconvinced, but we will save it. We have much more analysis throughout the next 2 hours because all three of you are sticking around right through the debate. And then after the debate, I'll thank you and pause our conversation now. Scott Reed, Kathleen Monk, and Corey Tanaik. We want to tell you about a little bit more analysis we'll offer later on with our front bench, Christy Clark, Tony Clement, and Nathan Cullen. Our Thursday regulars will be here later this hour. I'll show you a live shot just outside where the debate is about to happen, about an hour and 45 minutes from now. I guess not just about, but in a little bit. We will talk to the commissioner, or the head of the commission, rather, that is overseeing this debate, because there's a lot of controversy about some of the decisions that the commission has made. Michelle Cormier is my guest after a short break. Stay right there. Welcome back to a special edition of Power Play. We are counting down to the English language federal leaders debate, which will take place an hour and 45 minutes ahead from now in the building just behind me. My colleague, our senior correspondent, political correspondent, Mike LeCouture, is also covering this debate. And Mike, there has been some, consternation, some scrutiny over the commission that is overseeing this entire process for a couple of reasons. Can you outline them for us?
Yeah, it's interesting because they were really evident yesterday. I mean, it all started, of course, 24 hours before the French debate when they said they were going to move it for the Canadiens game, the Montreal Canadiens game, crucial for them to make the playoffs. For some fans out there, me included, happy that they did make the playoffs. But, just the fact that they moved it 2 hours up was really sort of, for a lot of people, quizzical and saying, why would you do something so extreme like that, even though a number of parties had asked for it? Then the exclusion of Jonathan Pedneau, the co-leader of the Green Party, just the morning of. That, of course, another decision that came very last minute. And then, of course, what happened yesterday in the post-debate scrums, where you had a number of right-wing media who had been accredited and really took over a lot of the questions last night of all of those leaders. And I think a lot of people were asking that today. What are they going to do tonight to try and fix it? We asked that question of Mark Carney before he was headed into Schwartz's Deli, a staple here in Montreal. And he as well had mentioned, Vashi, that look, this is something that there will be discussions about. He says it's not up to the political leaders or up to the parties, but he thinks it's Canadians that will be having those discussions. He believes that the commission is something that people want to have to continue to run these debates, but at the same time, he says that these are questions that will have to be answered going forward for future debates.
Okay, Mike, thanks so much. It's our senior political correspondent, Mike LeCouture. He'll be with us throughout the evening as well. I had the opportunity to put some of the questions that Mike just outlined to the executive director of the commission that oversees the execution of these leaders' debates. His name is Michelle Cormier. Hi, Mr. Cormier. Good to see you.
Nice to be here.
I appreciate you making the time. I'm going to start right in on it because there are people today, I've read a lot of analysis in various outlets saying that the debate commission should be abolished. How do you respond to that general assessment of the commission's performance thus far?
Well, I think there are many components to what we do. I think we had a wonderful debate last night. A revised format that I think worked very well with very experienced hosts. And, so I think the success of the commission is really based on that, first and foremost. For the rest, we'll be doing some analysis after and make recommendations in our final report.
Let me go through some of the more specific things, and we'll start with the exclusion of the Greens. I think most people understand why ultimately the decision was made. It's pretty clear that they didn't meet the criteria as they had to, as the commission had spelled out. I think it's the timing that is prompting questions. We have known for a number of days that they did not meet the threshold for the slate of candidates they were supposed to run. Why did you wait until the morning of the debate to make that announcement?
Well, it's because we had to work on the list that they had submitted to us, not to Elections Canada. Because, we asked the parties to submit a list of endorsed candidates, the people who had, been endorsed to run for them. This was like 2 weeks ago. And we did this before Elections Canada list because you need 2 weeks to advise the party who's on stage, how to prepare the set and everything. So we thought that the list that the parties would submit to us would be pretty close to what they would submit to Elections Canada a week later, if you follow me. So we were surprised, like everybody else, that the Greens came under 100 seats from what they had pledged to us. But, according to the criteria, we had said, we'll trust you on the list that you give to us. So we thought we couldn't break that agreement. But when when the leader, Mr. Pedneau, said the day before the debate, that they had withdrawn voluntarily some of these candidates from running for strategic reasons and to actually prevent the election of the Conservative Party, this was a breach of the whole philosophy of the debates and of the criteria. And then we had no choice but actually to withdraw the invitation.
So the discerning factor was, in fact, his admission that this was strategic and not the fact that they didn't have the amount of candidates.
Exactly, because we had said if you have enough candidates chosen, even though you haven't submitted the final list to Elections Canada, by March 31st, we'll let you in. But this was based on good faith that actually the numbers were true. So we were, like I said, we were surprised that, they told us, well, there was an anomaly. Some people didn't get enough signatures to be on the ballot. Others decided to change their mind because it was too difficult. We're threatened at the door of doing visits. You can't really verify that.
Was there engagement, though, with the party? Because Ms. May contends that it was more issues at the local level with Elections Canada and nominations, while it's Mr. Pedneau who talked about it being strategic. She later said that that's not actually the case. Was there some engagement? And I ask only because, it's a pretty serious decision to decide the morning of someone can't enter into debate that had ramifications for not just him, but for the rest of the candidates,
it's a very serious decision I wish I wouldn't have to make. But we talked to the Green parties. We verified with them. We asked them a written submission of what had happened, and then we had the public pronouncements of Mr. Pedneau, which were very clear.
So no regrets over that decision, despite he says it's pressure from other parties that essentially forced your hand.
No.
There was no engagement with other parties on this?
We don't engage with other parties on the others' credentials.
Okay, next question about the timing of the debate, and again, why you waited as late as you did as a commission to move the timing away from the same time as the hockey game. We knew that hockey game could have happened. Why wouldn't you have made that decision in advance to allow for, again, the reason I'm asking is because we all want as many people as possible to watch this, to engage in this, since there are only 2 debates.
Well, if the Canadians had qualified for the playoffs a couple of days earlier, we wouldn't be talking about this.
True, but we knew the possibility existed.
Yes, we
did.
We did know about the possibility. But when you actually prepare and choose dates, we do this along with the networks because yours and others have programming priorities depending on which nights of the weeks are better or not for ratings and all kinds of considerations. And this is Holy Week, so we had about a 3-day window: Wednesday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. And for the networks, the dates, the best dates were the Wednesday in French and Thursday in English. So we went with that. We knew there was a hockey game, but we, like I said before, the Canadians didn't. We were hoping that they would qualify by the weekend.
Okay.
So after that, we started discussing things, and we decided quite quickly that we had to change the hour of the debate.
Do you anticipate that things like this will be a bigger factor moving forward in discussions, and even around, for example, the Green Party's participation, things like that? Like, is there changes that you are open to?
Oh, we're always open to changes, and we always do a thorough post-mortem, after each election to consult the parties, the media, experts on, how to make it better next time. And of course, we'll be revisiting all this.
And just finally, sort of like a navel-gazing inside baseball question, but there were a lot of questions last night from certain outlets that, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but appeared to be willing to use legal means to ensure their entrance, and essentially arguing, for example, that there are 5 divisions at Rebel News, and the portion of questions they were able to ask was much greater than everyone else there. Some of the stuff that I've seen published included you essentially saying okay to that, rather than continuing to engage their threats of taking legal action or their letters or their protests. Is that in fact what happened, that basically you just didn't want to keep fighting them?
No, I mean, we lost twice in court. We declined their accreditation request both in 2019, 2021. They went to court, and the court said you have no business in deciding what's a journalist. You have to let them in. And in 2021, we were ordered to actually have accredited 11 members of Rebel. So we had a back and forth, through lawyers on this, and finally we decided that, we couldn't chance another defeat in court, which was actually just about certain because of the precedent. So the compromise for us is to say, well, let's give them 5 passes for the press availability, and maybe then, rather than have a court saying, well, you need to accredit 11 journalists like 4 years ago.
Is there a way to augment those so that other outlets have similar opportunities? Because nobody else got 5 passes.
Well, some got 4. Bigger networks, but I mean, we're working on adjustments tonight to hope to make it fair for everybody.
And what are the adjustments for tonight?
Well, we'll be announcing them later.
You don't want to just announce them right here,
I wish, but I couldn't do that right now. But we're working on that to try to make it fair for everybody, because we have 60 different news outlets. That's huge. We have people from Europe, from the United States, from all over, and all kinds of different media that go beyond the press gallery, which is usually the people who cover this. So it's a complex exercise, and we're all going to try to make it better.
Look, I'm uncomfortable with the idea of blocking any. I get that it's a difficult nuance line to walk. I think it's just that last night, if people had been at home watching that, there was an inordinate amount of questions afforded to them versus others. I think that's what would have stuck out.
Yeah, and they lined up behind the microphones, and
so you'll work to try and address that this evening, is what you're saying?
We're working to address that situation. Yes.
Okay.
Make it fair.
We'll stay tuned, Mr. Cormier. Thank you so much. I appreciate the time.
Thank you.
That's Michel Cormier. He is the executive director of the commission that oversees tonight's debate, which of course gets underway at 7 o'clock Eastern. I can show you a live shot right outside the building where it will take place. Some of the leaders are scheduled to start arriving at about 5:30 Eastern. We will, of course, show you that live as it happens. In the meantime, I've got to take a quick commercial break. On the other end of that break, our pollster of record here at CTV, Nick Nanos of Nanos Research, will give us a lay of the land. Just how close is this race, informing the stakes of tonight's debate? Nick will join me in just a few moments. Stay right there. There he is. Welcome back to a special edition of Power Play. You're looking live outside the building where tonight's English language federal leaders debate will take place. As you can see there, the Conservative bus has pulled up. We are awaiting the arrival of Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre. Over the next half hour or so, all of the party leaders will arrive for a 7 o'clock sharp start, 7 o'clock Eastern, I should say, 5 o'clock Mountain start to the debate, which will take place over 2 hours. We will, of course, offer post-game analysis as well. We'll keep on that shot for a moment as we await the exit from the bus of Pierre Poilievre. I want to bring in Nick Nanos, our pollster of record here, the founder and chief data scientist at Nanos Research, to help us understand, as Mr. Poilievre and his wife there walk out of the bus, exactly what the stakes are for him and the other party leaders. Nick, good to have you with us as always. We're just looking at a live shot. I'm not sure, I don't think you can see it, but we're looking at a live shot of the sort of one of the organizers of the debate greeting Mr. Poilievre and his wife as they look at their supporters who are kind of positioned across the board. Tell us a bit about where the Conservatives and the other parties stand. Every night you're talking to Canadians, getting a sense of who they support. What are those top line numbers today?
Well, Vashi, the latest CTV News Globe Mail tracking that we do has the Liberals at 44%, followed by the Conservatives at 39%, NDP back at 9%. The kicker here for the Conservatives is that at 39%, we've talked about this before, usually they can form a majority government. Stephen Harper back in 2011 formed a majority government in 2011 with that number. However, the big thing to remember is how low undecided is right now. Undecided is around 6 or 7%. That's about half what it usually is at this particular point in time in the campaign. What does this mean? This debate is actually not about persuading people, because there aren't enough persuadable people to make a difference for a lot of these campaigns. This is about converting people for Pierre Poilievre to try to get some Liberal voters, people who are currently tilting towards Carney, to decide to switch to vote for the Conservatives. Because you know what? There aren't enough votes in the NDP, the Bloc, the Green Party, the People's Party to make a difference for Pierre Poilievre. So Poilievre has to target Carney and figure out a strategy to try to convert some of those Liberal supporters or people who are leaning Liberal to look at the blue team.
What is your sense, Nick, of why that undecided voter, or the portion of voters rather who are undecided in this campaign, is so much lower than others? Is it the moment? Is it the choices they have before them? The coalescing kind of around two options that could form government?
Yeah, a lot of it has to do, Vashi, is the consolidation around the two frontrunners. I think for a lot of Canadians, they figure that they're making a very important decision that will affect who will lead the country, not just in terms of who will be dealing with Donald Trump, but the future of Canada in terms of trade, jobs, and the economy. And that voting for someone other than the two frontrunners is a luxury in an election that is actually critical for the future of the country. So I'm sure there are lots of new Democrats who in the past have voted NDP are looking at the front runners, especially the Liberals, and even Bloc voters in Quebec, looking at other voters, other parties, and other leaders. But because of the focus on Donald Trump and the importance of this election, it's all coming down to the two front runners.
I know 6% seems like a small number, but when you look at right now, where we were just looking at a shot of where all the parties stand according to your top line numbers, it's still enough to close the gap one way or the other, or to extend it depending on who the party is. How crucial, in your view, against that backdrop is not only the debate tonight, but the timing of it, the fact we're headed into a long weekend, we're headed into advanced voting with just a week left to go next week?
Yeah, actually, Vashi, the other thing that I'd add to this is this will be the last full body contact event during the campaign, because this will be the last time that all of the federal party leaders square off against each other. So if anybody wants to land a knockout punch, if they don't do it tonight, that's it. There's no more opportunities to do that when Canadians are all tuned in. The thing is stacking up the federal leadership debates right up against the holiday long weekend makes the combination of the debates and the long weekend a bit of a 1-2 punch that will be hard for any party to change when it comes to the trend line. I'm going to be looking at the numbers, Vashi, coming out of the holiday, after people are at the table talking about politics, talking about their family, talking about the future of the country, and making a decision, probably almost their final decision, on Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. That's probably when we're going to know what the final trajectory is for the campaign and have a sense of who might have the upper hand. But we have to remember, it's still tight. It's still close. There's only 5 points between the Liberals and the Conservatives right now.
And just one final question for you, just on what you just outlined. To what degree do you not expect much movement past Monday? Like, do you think that things are pretty locked in a week out?
Oh, man, are you asking me to predict? Are you kidding me? Like, come on.
I am, yeah.
So here's what I think is going to happen. What is Donald Trump going to do? You know, what will happen? What will happen in the markets? You know, the other thing is the platforms. We haven't talked about the platforms. Will the Liberals or the Conservatives, especially those two front-running parties, actually decide to put something new in the window to try to galvanize support in the close of the campaign? We don't know those things. So I don't think, you know, we'll probably have a sense of the trend, but I wouldn't say this thing isn't over until it's over. And, you know, maybe you can ask me Sunday night how I'm feeling about this, like the Sunday night before the vote. But right now, I think we'll probably have a sense of who has the upper hand next week. But I wouldn't underestimate either of the two frontrunners to do something to try to consolidate an advantage.
Yeah, you're right. It's not over till it's over. Nick, thank you so much. Appreciate the analysis. As always, Nick Nanos is our pollster of record here at CTV. Also, of course, the chief data scientist and founder of Nanos Research. Let me show you a live shot right now. Up in the air, high up in the air of the building behind me. That's where the debate will take place starting at 7 o'clock Eastern, 5 Mountain. What's at stake for each of the party leaders heading into tonight? I'm going to debrief with our reporters who have been covering the campaign trail, traveling throughout the last 4 weeks. After a short break, we're back with that in just 2 minutes. Welcome back to our special coverage of the federal leaders debate here on CTV News. You're looking live at the crowds that have assembled outside of where that debate will get underway in about an hour and 20 minutes from now. We, of course, throughout this campaign have had reporters traveling with each of the parties as they make their way through all of the events that have taken place right to this moment, about 10 days out from Election Day. I'll start off with our Judy Trin, who has been covering the Liberals. She's covered a lot of parties, but mostly the Liberals. She's among all those supporters. We're standing by, Judy, for Yves-Francois Blanchet to arrive. He's the next leader on schedule. Tell me a bit about your sense of what the campaign, the Liberals in particular, are saying about what Mr. Carney has to do tonight.
Sure, Vashi. First of all, let me set the scene for you. You can see that I'm like right here with the Conservatives who are right beside the Liberal supporters. These are mainly campaign workers. You can see that they are in a good mood, right? They have confidence going into this debate. But what the French debate showed us yesterday was where Mark Carney will have to defend against. What is the strategy to defend against some of the criticism? Specifically, what we learned after watching that French debate was that the line of attack for the Conservatives against the Liberal campaign will have to do with his involvement with Brookfield Asset Management and whether or not that past involvement equals a conflict of interest. So they are working to their line of argument in terms of how to defend against that. The other thing they really want to make sure that they do is portray Mr. Carney as the best candidate to take on Donald Trump's trade war. And by doing that, they hope that they know that is the issue that is polling well for them in terms of what Canadians care about. But I want to show you something else, Vashi. You can also see that this media truck has been purchased by Rebel Media, and you can see that foreign interference is also a line of attack that right-wing conservative media has come across and that want to hit Mark Carney with. So we will be wondering whether or not that is a line of preparation for Mark Carney. He will have to be prepared for that, Vashi.
Okay, Judy, thank you so much. Judy, right in the thick. Judy Trin, right in the thick of the action, just a few meters from where we're sitting, much more calmly here. Also happening where Judy is, if we can pull up the live shot, is that the leader of the Bloc Quebecois, Yves-Francois Blanchet, his bus has just arrived, and he will be emerging from that bus any moment now. So we'll keep that up there while I bring in my other two colleagues who have been covering other campaigns, other parties rather, during this campaign. Rachel Aiello and Abigail Beeman are here. Before I get you to weigh in on your own campaigns, let's talk about the Bloc for a second. They had their stakes for them last night in the French debate, Rachel, were very high, right? The Liberals' gains in this province have come at their expense. They were in a very different situation just a few months ago, kind of like nationally we speak about the Conservatives. What was your impression of I guess I had thought Yves-Francois Blanchet would go for it way more.
Yeah.
He appeared risk adverse like so many others last night.
I think it was just they were all kind of a bit sedate and on message track. But I think certainly last night was his night to shine. We had that joke about Harry Potter math, his quip about Canadian groceries. So that was really, I think, Blanchet in his element. I'll be curious to see what role he plays tonight because, frankly, I think a lot less is at stake for the Bloc leader in tonight's conversation.
And sometimes when there is less at stake, Abigail, there is a freedom to that. And Mr. Blanchet, we've seen in the House, for example, often uses that capacity to really go at and kind of poke at some of the vulnerabilities of other candidates. It'll be interesting to see if he's able to do that tonight.
Right, we can see if he chooses to have a little more fun. We heard that last night with some of those quips as well. So yeah, that's definitely something to be watching for, but I don't think that he will get as much attention as last night with the stakes being where they are for him in the English debate.
Very true. So you've been with the NDP over the last week. Someone else who kind of appeared to have less to lose last night was Jagmeet Singh, given where the NDP is, as we watch the leader of the Bloc here make his way to some of his supporters and then into the building for the debate. Tell me a little bit about your conversations with the NDP campaign today, how they view the prospect of tonight, and if their strategy changes at all night tonight.
Yeah, that's a good question. So everybody was overall very happy with Mr. Singh's performance. He had a couple of zingers or one-liners that landed pretty well. I think especially that the comment about Mr. Blanchet being as useless as the monarchy, and the campaign obviously making it clear that it was no accident that happened in the French debate. But don't worry, we've got more things up our sleeves tonight for the English debate. So we can expect to see that. I think the campaign believes that if Jagmeet Singh can stay the course and deliver a similar performance as he did last night, then that would be a win for them. So, and what that means is carving out some space and getting some attention and launching his attacks in there and getting some oxygen, because we saw his concern last night about not getting as much airtime as the other two, as Carney and Poilievre. So that's what I'll be watching.
Yeah, he went after the moderator.
Right.
In that debate. We will speak with Steve Paikin, who will moderate tonight's debate actually in the next hour. Rachel, I wanted to ask you about the Conservatives and your sense of how they view this debate, if at all differently than last night's debate.
So from the people I've been speaking with, they're saying no, it's going to be a similar approach from Poilievre as he had last night. They thought he did a great job last night, seemed prime ministerial, and kind of hit the points he wanted to about crime, affordability, and the economy. And they said to expect again to see him try to draw contrast with Mark Carney in terms of who was actually the change candidate, but also this question of pointing back to the fact that he is still the Liberals. He is, running still on the record of the last 10 years. So I'm expecting to hear more of that from Poilievre, but they're saying again they thought his tone was good last night. So probably again that attempt to be kind of level-headed and serious, prime ministerial is how they're describing it, but also trying to inject that positive. So I'm not sure we're going to see the Poilievre we came to know in the House of Commons tonight, but he does have the tendency to kind of get there if someone gets under his skin. So there is the opportunity for that to happen.
My biggest curiosity is whether they engage each other. This is so much down to, if we look at what Nick Nanos just told us, a race between the two of them. They really avoided that last night for the most part.
Well, and even from where they were standing, I think that played into it too.
Yeah, I wonder if that changes. Hopefully we'll get an inside look soon. Thanks so much, guys. I appreciate it. Rachel Aiello and Abigail Beeman, correspondents, both of them at CTV National News. I'm going to take a quick commercial break. Let's take a look outside, I guess, at the live shot where supporters remain. The Bloc Quebecois leader has entered. Now we await the arrival of NDP leader Jagmeet Singh and Liberal leader Mark Carney. After a short break, our coverage continues with our special campaign edition of The Front Bench. Christy Clark, Tony Clement, and Nathan Cullen are my guests. There they are in just 2 minutes. Back in a moment. Welcome back to our special coverage here at CTV of the federal leaders debate, scheduled to get underway just over an hour from now. One of those leaders is arriving at the building right where we are stationed. I think it's supposed to be the Liberal leader, Mark Carney, if I'm right. Let me see, they're just pulling up. No, maybe it looks orange to me, so that means NDP. NDP leader Jagmeet Singh, I got my schedule mixed up there. He is about to arrive to this debate, and then he will be followed by Mark Carney. We'll, of course, show you that live as it happens. As we look at those pictures, I would love to bring in our Thursday front bench, our special campaign edition of our front bench. With me this evening, Christy Clark is the former Liberal Premier of British Columbia. Tony Clement is a former Conservative federal cabinet minister, and Nathan Cullen is a former NDP MP and BC minister. Hi, everybody. Nice to see you tonight. Thanks for making the time. Nathan, I'm going to start with you tonight, not just because it looks like you're joining us from the middle of a hike, which feels very on brand, but also because the leader of the NDP, Jagmeet Singh, is arriving, and we're just looking at a live shot of that right now. Your thoughts on the stakes for Mr. Singh tonight?
Well, they couldn't be higher in a lot of ways. The NDP is fighting for every seat. I'm here in northwestern BC right now, and this is one of those. I think Mr. Singh doing well in the debates, staying combative, yet of course respectful, and all that fine line and what occurs in the debate, which I think he in large part accomplished last night in French. We did color code the bus very orange, Fashy, for to keep things really straightforward. I'm disappointed it looked red on the screen, but it's obviously a big debate. I think it's going to be really important for Mr. Singh to do well and come across as the fighter that he portrays himself to be on the issues that matter for Canadians.
I think the color blindness is mine, not the screen. I will take the blame for that one. Tony, how hard a job does Mr. Poilievre have tonight?
Well, he's got to sort of have a fine line. He's kind of on the razor's edge, in my view. Number one, I think he's got to continue to be thoughtful, talk directly to voters as much as possible, and to quote unquote be prime minister. I think he accomplished those things last night as well. But at the same time, I think if there are opportunities to gently but firmly draw a contrast with Mark Carney, he's got to take advantage of those opportunities as well. So that's the tough job that he's got tonight, but I think he's capable of doing it.
If Mr. Poilievre, Christy, has to create contrast with Mr. Carney, what does Mr. Carney have to do with Mr. Poilievre?
Well, he has to look like he has been looking so far, which is as a prime minister. And when you see the huge numbers he's getting in the polls and the incredible change in this campaign, what I would say is when it's working, don't change it. Keep looking like a prime minister. Don't react when you're provoked. Look like you're in control. Look like you know what you're doing. And guess what about Mark Carney? All of those things are true. So tonight, I think his biggest, challenge is going to be when they get under his skin, when they attack him relentlessly, just be calm, don't react, and continue to appear like you're a leader who's fully in control of the situation, which I think is the reason why he's been doing so well so far.
I don't want to get too far ahead of what's coming next, Nathan, but we're heading into a long weekend. Advance voting begins, and then it's literally as of Monday, just 1 week out from Election Day. What does the campaign, do you think, look like next week?
Well, it's full on sprint. I think because of the following and the timing of the leaders debate, as you say, right to the Easter weekend, and the advance voting already going on, a lot of voters are, the majority of voters tune in right about now, typically in a campaign, but not a lot of days available for the parties to get their message out, with Easter being and Passover being where it is. One thing to Christy's point, and I wonder with Tony, does Mr. Poilievre not have to directly go after Mr. Carney right now, given where the polling is at? Is there not an opportunity? They didn't even make eye contact last night in French. That it felt like there was almost two solitudes, maybe a poor expression to use, but that Mr. Poilievre does have the task, as Mr. Singh was doing, I think, quite effectively on some of Mr. Poilievre's maybe vulnerabilities. I didn't see Mr. Poilievre take Mr. Carney on directly, and I'm wondering, since he's behind, is this not the moment? If not now, then when? And that space, I think Mr. Singh's opportunity is the space on the left. That is, Mr. Carney has gone more to the center and more to the right on some issues. But I do wonder if Mr. Poilievre missed an opportunity last night, and if now he's in English, if he'll not have to take it, it won't be a missed opportunity for what happens next.
Mm-hmm.
Tony, I'll get your thoughts on that, because we were talking about it a little bit earlier, and just the lack of one-on-one engagement outside of Mr. Singh, particularly to Mr. Poilievre, was kind of notable last night. Do you think that strategically that will be different?
Well, I think there was a really good moment last night on the issue of whether to use the notwithstanding clause to keep mass murderers in prison. And I think Pierre Poilievre came across factual, but also passionate about trying to protect society, and contrasted that with the liberal Carney position. So, yeah, I think there was a moment in last night's debate where that was accomplished. I think he's got to do two things. He's got to keep the people that are passionate about Pierre Poilievre in this election still engaged, so they actually do go out and vote, and this includes younger people. And at the same time, there is still 20 or 30% of the voting base that are at least open to changing their minds. So those are two very different things, Vashi. And I would just caution, I'm a partisan. I love it when my leader goes for the throat. I get that. But, you just have to be careful how you do it. And Pierre has to be mindful of that.
Well, and I think Pierre Poilievre is their campaign is not a winning campaign at the moment. They're really, nothing that they've done has changed the channel. Debate is an opportunity to do that. And I would argue, I think, to Nathan's point at the beginning, Poilievre has got to find a way to land a punch. He's got to have one of those historic moments where he says something and it gets the response that turns everything around. No, I don't think that's likely, but I do think that's kind of the only, it's the Hail Mary that he's got to try and play tonight. I think it's kind of exciting to take a minute to watch for that. And the other, as Nathan also pointed out, the NDP are in a death rattle here. So you've got to, Singh has got to say to his voters, listen, you guys, you have to elect New Democrats or no one will hold the Liberals to account. That's sort of where he's at in terms of the numbers that they've got. So I would argue Mark Carney, steady as she goes, stay stable, stay prime ministerial. But for the other two, there is so much at stake here, because if this doesn't go well tonight for either of them, neither of them is going to have a long future in politics after, 2 weeks from now.
The only thing I don't
is the calculation. Yeah, go ahead, Nathan. Yeah.
I don't think death rattle was anything that I actually invoked.
No, you did not say that. I inferred it. It's true.
It's okay.
We're not saying literally here, yeah.
Well, to Tony's point, I think if Pierre is still appealing too much to the base, which he's been doing a lot of, right? Talking about some of those issues that do rattle and stir conservative hearts and minds, it's not enough. And so his ability to appeal to that larger segment, I think, will be really critical. I would say, Mr. Carney is a product of his time, and maybe boring is what people are looking for. They also do want to know if the job description now is sitting across the table from Donald Trump, that you're able to fight for things. And there's some passion, not just the boring, economist competence thing. So I think the moment is also available for Mr. Carney, if he chooses it, to actually show a little fight, show a little, Fort Smith and a little that northern attitude. I do think Mr. Singh, though, is able to hold up the campaigns that are fighting hard right across this country, and the ability of that relatively small caucus in the last parliament to make history that matters to people around affordability of dental care, health care, pharmacare. Those are the things that a lot of voters are saying, how is my life going to be any different? And was it made different because of those 25 outstanding New Democrat MPs in the last parliament? And can I expect the same thing if I put some of those good MPs back in?
I just have 30 seconds for each of Christy and Tony. We're just looking live now at the final leader to arrive. It is Liberal leader Mark Carney. I take everyone's point about kind of like you've got to make a move, Tony. I wonder, though, when it comes to how much each candidate has to lose or how little, Mr. Poilievre still has 38, 37, 39, depends on the poll, but percentage of popular support right now. Like, there's some risk built into there too, depending how far you want to go.
Yeah, and I think, look, there's some risk, but there's also reward. But I would put it a different way than my colleagues on this panel. I think Pierre Poilievre showing that he has command of the facts, that he knows what he wants to do when he's in government, that he has the voters' hearts and minds at heart. That's what he has to do, and that's just like what he did in the French debate, rinse and repeat for the English debate, and that's fine too.
Okay, Christy, last word to you.
Well, last word from the debate night watch party here in Miramichi, New Brunswick. People, as I was door knocking today, are feeling really worried about the future of the country. They're very concerned about what's going on south of the border, and they are loving the fact that Canadians are finding our identity and coming together and uniting. I think if Mark Carney is as good tonight as he was last night, I think we're going to have another debate that's very, very good for the Liberals in the long run, because people are really looking for that stability, that confidence, that experience, somebody who's going to fight against Donald Trump in a country where, frankly, a lot of people are feeling very, very worried about the future.
Okay, I'll leave it on that note. Thanks, everyone, for making time for the discussion. I appreciate it. Great to see you all. Nathan Cullen, Tony Clement, and Christy Clark are front bench. We'll swing back to that live picture outside here, the building where the debate is going to take place. You can see Mark Carney greeting a number of supporters. We're about an hour away from the start of the debate, which will take place over the course of 2 hours. Mr. Carney is the last federal leader to arrive as he makes his way, I think, closer into the building. Each of the parties had a number of supporters assembled outside, which is fairly normal. And here he is shaking the hands of some of the debate organizers. We have a lot of special coverage for you this evening ahead. The leaders are about to face off in English.
This is a CTV News special presentation.
I'm ready to give everything for Canada.
It is time for a change and a new day for Canada.
Invest in our healthcare. Expand pharmacare. Lift people up.
I will be as strong a leader as I can.
A CTV News special presentation of the Federal Leaders Debate. Reporting live from Montreal, here is Vashi Kapelos.
Hi there, welcome to our special coverage of the Federal Leaders Debate here on CTV News. I am Vashi Kapelos, coming to you live this evening from Montreal. Let's look inside. We're getting the first glimpse inside the room. Looks very much like it did last night for the French language debate. These are the only two debates of the entire election campaign. We're about 10 days out from Election Day on April 28th. That is where the four men who are vying to, three of them vying to be prime minister, but that's where they'll face off against each other starting at 7 o'clock Eastern, 5 o'clock Mountain. I am here as we look inside with three people who have helped others get ready for a moment like this and certainly know what the stakes are for the leaders who will be present in that debate. Scott Reed, Kathleen Monk, and Corey Tanaik are here again. Hey guys, nice to see you. So we're an hour closer now, Corey, to the start of this debate. Take us behind the scenes a bit. You've managed campaigns, you've been director of communication. Like, what is this point of the day or the night like for candidates?
Well, you're generally in your holding room with your key staff, maybe going over your opening statement if the format provides for one. Maybe sparring a little bit, practicing a couple of answers, a couple of lines that you're trying to work in, but trying to keep it calm at the same time. Like it's too late to rehearse much. It's more just trying to get the mood right, trying to get the candidate's confidence in a good spot. And they're all a little bit different in terms of how they deal with that moment of pressure. Some are chatty and funny, and some are, a little more inwardly focused and reserved. It really depends on the candidate, but wherever their Zen spot is, you want to have them there before they go out.
If they have one. Kathleen, I was thinking today of some of the more memorable moments of past debates, like in those rare instances where there is a moment that comes out of it that can impact the trajectory. There was that Ignatieff versus Leighton moment, right? Back in 2011 that focused on his attendance, that really fed into a narrative that ended up hurting Mr. Ignatieff quite profoundly in that election. Like, what goes into making those moments? Is it deliberate, or is there something kind of,
I'd like to say it's just magic, but it's not.
I don't think
it's pretty deliberate. So it starts actually with research, opposition research in the first place. That line, if you recall, was, Mr. Ignatieff, you don't get a promotion if you don't show up to vote, right? You don't show up to work, you don't get a promotion, was the line. And we did some research to find out that he actually wasn't showing up in the House for critical votes against the Harper government. And so we tested that in focus groups. We knew it worked. We knew it worked with people. And so then we started workshopping in debate prep. And not only that, but we had ads to roll out immediately post debate night. So that combination, yes, it was a lot of, Jack's performance, his ability to work that line in, to deliver it with effectiveness. We knew it would work with the audience, but then it was also, we actually had a series of ads to roll out to reinforce that message.
So it was not of the moment.
No, it wasn't of the moment. No, and so that's the thing, that debates aren't often won, they're really more often lost. And Ignatieff lost that debate that night and just tumbled in the polls, like just really, he couldn't get up off the mat after that. That was what you call a technical knockout or a haymaker, It really was a devastating blow. And I think he couldn't, recover after that. Those are rare, though.
Yeah. Very rare. Yeah, and I'm wondering, again, in the preparation, in the process of preparing, Scott, how much effort goes into trying to figure out stuff like that in this day and age, or just more overall strategy about how not to be the receiving end of that?
Well, you definitely want to have strategy for how do you parry an attack. And you can identify, if you're Mark Carney, right, you're going to get hit with tax havens tonight. You're going to get hit with Brookfield and headquarters in the United States. And so what's the right energy in coming back to that? How much do you engage it? How much do you deflect it? How much do you move past it? You think about those things. You have a strategy for those, and then you rehearse the lines, and then you find out that when the leader says the lines, they don't come out the way you imagined it on paper, so you adjust the lines, and then you rehearse it. But one mistake I've often found that a lot of leaders make is they want to rehearse a lot. They want to mimic the scenario. Get me into a studio. Get me under the lights. Let's do this. Let's rehearse it. I want the verisimilitude. And you can over-prep by spending too much time rehearsing and not enough time thinking about what is your play? What is your fundamental core strength? How do you communicate that? And what are the 2 or 3 things you don't want to do, the 2 or 3 places you don't want to go? You remember, I'm going back a long time, when John Turner got nailed on patronage by Brian Mulroney, it was the second time that had come around. John Turner actually raised it the second time. And it was like Mulroney couldn't believe the treasure chest of gold that had been placed in front of him. And he just buried Turner.
Yeah.
Corey, what are your thoughts on the balance between just figuring out how to defend yourself versus being more aggressive?
Well, I think you're preparing. The trick is you're preparing for the kinds of attacks you've heard that your opponents make on you in the past. You've got your own patter down pretty pat by this point in the campaign. But if you're just repeating the same sort of boilerplate that you've been using in your stump speech and preparing for the stuff you've heard the other leaders do in theirs, you're probably not going to do very well, because it has to have some originality. It has to be a little bit new for it to really strike that moment. And so you're trying to guess a little bit. You're trying to war game out. All right, so what would I do? How could we put this? What might come at us? We kind of broadly know the topic areas and the vector of the attack, but what could they throw into that to make it a little bit spicy, or make it a little bit more newsworthy, make it a little more clippable? Because at the end of the day, this is all a battle for clips, and it has to be spicy. It has to be 3 or 4 seconds long, really tight, and it has to be kind of new. So you're trying to work in some new material, and you're trying to prepare for some new attack material.
So Nathan Cullen was just on, Kathleen, and just to ground this in the context specifically of tonight, was sort of both Poilievre and Singh need to go all out. This is it. This is your chance. It's if you're going to get a win, it's going to have to be tonight. And do you think that's true?
I think I think it is true. But sometimes you have to coach your leader also not to go too hard. John Horgan, former BC premier, he was known sometimes going too hard against Christy Clark, your former guest, and it looked too sexist or too harsh. So we had to
we don't have that problem tonight.
No, not at all.
Only men up there. Don't worry. Yeah.
And so his advisors had to dial him back. Whereas somebody like Premier Rachel Notley, who was just a candidate at the time, and when she won her first election in 2015, she's just a naturally skilled debater. Maybe because she's trained as a lawyer, or maybe it's just a little bit of the fire in her, but you just unleash her and she goes. And she went up against Jim Prentice, the late Jim Prentice, and she did some devastating work in that debate. So sometimes you just want to, let your candidate go, and sometimes you actually want to hone them in. And I think tonight with Poilievre, to your point, that question is, he has to be careful not to cement in viewers' minds that image of him that they already have, which is kind of bitter, angry, aggressive, negative. So he has to come across, yes, as he can be warm or authentic in some ways, but also not like, that he has a surgically implanted smile, right? He has to still do the work he needs because, as your guest just said, he has to change the narrative if he wants the polls to move in the very short time window we have. Remember, it is Easter weekend. Families will be gathering. It's an important time. They'll be saturating on thinking about the message, thinking about what happened in the debates and making their decision on how to vote.
Can you think of anyone who's done that, Scott? Like who goes for the jugular but doesn't turn people off? I feel like that would be very hard.
Yeah, Leighton did it to Ignatieff, but there was also sort of an indifference to Ignatieff with the voters, so people were happy to see him get dismantled. I think if Trudeau was in this debate tonight, there would be zero constraints on being mean at him. One other thing I guess I would add to all of that is I don't think I agree with Nathan. I think it's true for Singh that he's going to go all out. I'm not certain that Poilievre, if what he means by all out
I was
is what I think.
paraphrasing, I should be fair.
No, but
yeah.
I mean, if he goes hard, so to speak, I think that could be a big mistake for him because it will cement. And you have to say to the leaders, what's the worst you? We have to imagine the worst you, and we don't put that person on.
A question I never want to ask myself.
But, well, for Carney, the worst you is you're welcome for me.
Look inside yourself,
Yeah, it's look inside yourself. I'm a little pissy about you asking that question, and you should be grateful that I'm even putting myself on offer. That's the worst him. It's got to be absent. I think for Poilievre, it's Trumpy. He's got to make certain that he isn't Trumpy, that he isn't sort of glibly aggressive. And so I think, but last night screwed it up for him because one of the strategies for tonight for Poilievre would have been to hope that Singh takes the fight to Carney so that he could then slide in behind and present himself as a slightly more appealing fellow that people haven't seen before.
Didn't happen.
Now he's got a head full of bad wiring. He's thinking, oh no, Singh is actually going to go after me. So maybe I'm the only one who can get after Carney. Tough choices.
Yeah, very much so. Okay, we'll leave this part of our conversation there. You guys will be with me ahead of the start of the debate and then after for post-game analysis as well. Scott Reed, Kathleen Monk, and Corey Teneycke. I'll take a very quick break. I think we have a live shot inside the debate room, which is, of course, going to get underway less than an hour from now. We'll take a quick break and talk a bit more about what goes into preparing for a debate like tonight's in just a moment. Back in just 2 minutes.
Why do you have the worst attendance record in the House of Commons of any member of Parliament? If you want to be Prime Minister, you better learn how to be a member of Parliament first. You know, most Canadians, if they don't show up for work, they don't get a promotion.
You do not have a monopoly on patriotism. And I resent the fact that your implication that only you are a Canadian. I want to tell you that I come from a Canadian family and I love Canada. And that's why I did it, to promote prosperity.
With one signature of a pen, you've reversed that, thrown us into the north-south influence of the United States and will reduce us, I'm sure, to a colony of the United States because when the economic levers go, the political independence is sure to follow.
Welcome back to our special coverage and extended edition of Power Play here on CTV. I'm Vashi Kapelos in Montreal tonight. We've got the federal leaders debate happening just over half an hour from now at 7 o'clock Eastern, 5 o'clock Mountain. It'll take place over the course of 2 hours, but the leaders have been preparing for much longer than that. Here with me now to talk a bit more about what goes into preparing for a debate like the one about to take place are three people who have helped the leaders, past leaders in different capacities, do just that. Dimitri Soudis is the former Director of Communications to Prime Minister Stephen Harper. Carl Blanchet is the President of Traction Strategies and former interim NDP National Director. And Geneviève Tomney is the Principal at GT & Co. Hi, everybody. Great to see you tonight. Thank you very much for making the time. Geneviève, you most recently, and correct me if I'm wrong, I think helped prepare Bonnie Crombie for the debate that took place at during the provincial election. I know that for a lot of Canadians, it's just tonight. For leaders, how much preparation, like how long do leaders often spend getting ready for an event like this?
Yeah, I mean, as much as possible. And provincially, we were in the same situation with our candidate who had, similar to Mark Carney, never done this on the big stage before, right? So you're trying to squeeze in as much as possible. Of course, with the snap election, those timelines get really jammed. So, you know, it kind of starts off as this conversation around how do you want to show up on that stage? Who are you going to be? And I think we saw that really clearly, or at least a dress rehearsal of it in the French debate last night. Because once you can establish what that persona is and who you're going to be, it makes it so much easier to figure out how you're going to navigate the ebb and flow of a debate and how you're going to handle those attacks. But the bottom line is this is the big show. This can be a turning point. It can be a turning point in election campaigns if you play it right. So it's a heck of a lot of work that goes into it.
Carl, what do people who are preparing the candidates do to try and keep the nerves at bay, particularly for people like Genevieve mentioned, who may not have been at this level or in this arena before?
Well, the one thing when you do debate prep is that you make sure that if you're standing in for somebody, that you don't actually win that debate. You need to let the leader build some confidence because that's what it's about, right? You need to be able to help them get into the zone. So you try some lines, you try some attacks, imagining what the opponents would do, but you want to give them a chance to feel confident with the material so that when they show up, they're not more nervous than they would be. So it's all about getting into the zone and people being aware of what their message is and who they're talking to, because you're not talking to the moderator, you're not talking to a panel of journalists, you're barely talking to the other leaders. What you're really doing is talking to the voters that you're trying to attract.
And so how much of a balancing act, Dimitri, is that, particularly in preparation? Like, thinking about how you're going to take on your opponent and the degree to which you need to, if you think about this election in particular, looking at Mr. Poilievre and Mr. Carney, versus how much you're going to use this opportunity to speak directly to Canadians?
Well, first of all, every candidate is unique, so you have to adapt your debate strategy based on that candidate's strengths and weaknesses. And secondly, you have to read the room. You have to read the mood of the country in order to develop your strategy for the debate. So months go into debate prep. And what I mean by that is there's these debate binders, which I'm sure my two other colleagues have seen before and have worked on. So there's debate binders on your policies. There's debate binders on your opponent's policies. And then you have a debate binder on how you're going to, quote unquote, attack your opponent. At the same time, you usually spend 2 to 3 days of debate prep, a couple of days prior to the actual debate happening. There's people who are pretending to be, so in this case, for the Conservative leaders debate prep, there's people that stood in, and Carl made a good point there. You don't want to destabilize the candidate you're preparing by out debating him. The key thing of debate prep, in my view, and that's how we did it with Prime Minister Harper at the time, is it's a different team that focuses solely on debate prep, and then the 2 or 3 closest advisors, so it was myself, Karen Stewart-Olsen, and a few others, that would then take a role in observing how debate prep is taking place. The key thing is moments before the debate starts is there's usually 1 or 2 of the leader's closest advisors with him, and a taboo. Never give any advice that is different from what debate prep was all about, because you're going to destabilize your candidate.
Genevieve, I've always wanted to ask, I imagine that each of the candidates has to be prepared for the kinds of attacks that are what vulnerabilities they face. How honest are people around them about what their vulnerabilities are?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. And I think it is, we're not talking about women in tonight's debate, but I think it is unique in my experience, having prepared 2 women for debates too, because I think that the attacks come and they hit a little bit differently, and you've really got to get your candidate prepared for that. So what I found was, in choosing the folks who were going to play the other candidates, the other roles in that debate prep, it was really important to get people who were going to be as authentic as possible, the people who were going to be able to get under your candidate's skin in exactly the way that you would expect the real person, the real live opponent, to be able to do that. Because if you can't properly set them up and prepare them for that emotional feeling, that reaction that they're going to get on the stage in that room when somebody presses just the right button, then they're going to be in trouble.
Can you do that? Or is there a certain amount, Carl, of stuff you can't teach that? You know what I mean? Yeah,
there's things that you can change, but you need to do the best you can to make sure that your leader is not blindsided. And the flip side of that is that you're trying to give him tools to blindside his opponents. And that's why, you have those zingers, those one-liners, the research bits, things that they're not expecting to see that might destabilize them for the rest of the debate. So you're scoring a point, and then they may perform, not as good for the rest of the debate, which could turn to your advantage. But the key thing is, as it was said on the previous panel, you can't over-prep them. You can't over-prepare them. You can't imagine everything, because if there's too much in their heads, then they will forget what the key messages are, and that's really what this is all about.
I see both your colleagues nodding. Dimitri, last 30 seconds goes to you. You can't over-prepare them. You think that's accurate?
It is, because there also needs to be a natural flow to the conversation that they're going to have tonight. And oftentimes, that you had a choice, sir, between Brian Mulroney and John Turner. I actually asked Prime Minister Mulroney, was that pre-scripted? And the answer he gave me was no. Certain things happen naturally, and that's really when the knockout punch truly lands. The last thing I will say, Vashi, is last night we saw a French debate, for those of us who watched the French debate, where leaders were more docile with each other. I think Mr. Poilievre even invited the other three leaders out for dinner, because one of the questions was about if they eat American food or not. Tonight, you're going to see a more aggressive approach, both from Mr. Carney and Mr. Poilievre. The way that the Liberals put it to me, for example, was yesterday, Mr. Carney was playing the goalkeeper of a hockey team. Today, he's going to be a forward.
Interesting. We'll see very shortly. Thanks, everyone. I appreciate the discussion. Genevieve Tomney, Carl Blanchet, and Dimitri Soudis. We're back with tonight's debate moderator, Steve Paikin, after a short break. Stay right there. Welcome back to our special coverage of the federal leaders debate, slated to get underway just over half an hour from now. Steve Paikin from TVO is the moderator of tonight's break. I had a chance to sit down with him and ask him what to expect. Have a listen to our conversation. Hi, Steve. Good to see you.
Great.
Thanks for making time for this. In what I imagine is a busy preparatory period for you.
It's nuts. It really is nuts.
So what has the preparation for tonight been like?
Intense.
Yeah.
If the debate sucks, it will not be for lack of effort. Let's put it that way. And I got to hand it to the team of people I work with. We have worked on these questions for, dozens of hours. We've been going at it over and over and over and over. And I kind of like where we are right now, but we'll see.
How do you see your role in tonight's debate? Because, debates have been a huge part of the North American kind of zeitgeist over the past number of years. And there's been a ton of debate even over the role of the moderator. How do you see your role tonight?
Well, first and foremost, I'm not out there to be the fact checker. So if somebody says something that is sort of egregiously awful or something, it's not going to be up to me to fact check them on what they say. It'll be up to the fellow leaders to do that. So that's number one. Number two, what do I need to do? I need to try to make sure that we have a good, energetic, civilized debate where all four of them are not screaming at each other all at once, because that provides nothing to anybody. Mm-hmm. And if we can make that happen, then I think Canadian public that watches will be the better for it.
You mentioned some of the work you've done over the questions. What should Canadians be expecting to hear? Not obviously what the questions are,
but
sort
of
the issues that you, along with your team, felt were important to debate tonight.
I think if you look at, watch a newscast, pick up a newspaper. You know what's going on in the world today. We're going to ask about the things that are big and going on in the world today. That's pretty obvious. We've got these 5 themes that we've sort of divided the debate into. And then there's one little extra thing at the end there, which I think will be a little bit different and a little interesting, a little off the beaten path, that might provide for some interesting moments. So I hope that by the time it's all said and done, we've got a really watchable 2 hours of engaging and informative debate.
And as far as the structure goes, is there anything different tonight versus last night that we should expect?
A little bit different. The general idea is to have one-on-one questions to start each segment, each theme, followed by lots of time for open debate. And that way, I've seen debates in years past where everything, there seemed to be a feeling like, oh, we've got to have lots of bells and whistles and we got to throw the video, we got to do this and that, and no. I think we're just going to tone it down a bit. You know, we're going to have more time for interaction among the four of them, and we're not going to worry so much about all the sis boom bah, if you know what I mean.
Is it up to them to engage each other in that debate? Because I was telling you before we started, I was interested to find out that last night that opportunity existed, that they didn't really seize it. Could be a language thing, I'm not sure, but is it essentially on them to engage in that?
Yes and no. I mean, I do.
You'll prompt them.
I will if need be, yes. We certainly provide the format and opportunity for them to engage on the issues as they choose to. I will make sure they don't all scream at each other at once. And if for whatever reason, and I don't imagine this will happen, again, I think you're right, I think 3 of them being in their second language last night contributed to this. If there's a need for me to prompt to keep it going, then of course I will do that.
And I guess final question for you, if you take a step back, you've moderated a lot of these. We're at a particularly significant time, it feels like, in our country's trajectory and our history. What purpose do you hope tonight's debate serves for Canadians?
I'd love people to come to the end of it after 2 hours and think to themselves, I know the issues better, I know the leaders better, I feel better able to make a decision on election day as to where I want to put my X. That's what it's all about. You know, Vashi, I really believe this. I think people can sort of mosey through the beginning of the campaign, and then I think when the leaders' debate comes, I think people say to themselves, well, I guess I got to get serious about this vote, and I guess I got to watch this debate and really learn about the issues more. And as a result, you know people watch this thing. There will be millions of people watching this thing. So I sure hope we can put on a good show.
I'm sure you will, Steve. Thanks so much. Appreciate
Pleasure.
it. Best of luck tonight.
Thank you very much.
Not that you need it.
I will need it. I will.
No.
Believe me.
Steve Paikin will moderate tonight's debate, which gets underway. You can see the countdown clock on the side of your screen. Less than half an hour now. We can take a live look inside that debate set. We anticipate all the leaders will, who are already here, will enter that set and, of course, do that photo op just like they did last night. Our special coverage here on Power Play continues after a very short commercial break. We're back in a moment. Welcome back to a special edition of Power Play. Less than half an hour until federal party leaders will square off in the one and only English language federal leaders debate of this election campaign. We have all of our reporters who have been covering the campaign standing by to give us their insights. We're going to start off with our senior correspondent, Mike Lecouture, who I believe has a guest with him. Hi, Mike.
We do. Hi, Vashi. Nice to see you again. NDP campaign spokesperson Anne McGrath joining me right now here just ahead of this English language debate. Looking back to last night's, and Jagmeet Singh seemed a lot more freewheeling and open to taking shots. What was the strategy behind that?
Well, I think what he did was he brought the fire. He brought the passion. He's very, very. I think we are all experiencing a lot of anxiety right now and concern, and we feel the threat from Trump and the tariffs and those kinds of things. And Jagmeet was really standing up for Canada, and he was saying, "Let's keep Canada, Canada, and let's make sure that there's a strong NDP in place in Parliament so that we don't have the cuts that will come from Poilievre and possibly cuts coming from Carney as well. As a matter of fact, very likely cuts coming from Carney as well. So I think he had to really point out that there is a real danger in having a Parliament that doesn't have a robust NDP presence there. Many of the things that we care about in Canada have come about in minority parliaments where the NDP has had the balance of power and really been able to fight for things like public health care, pensions, employment insurance, housing, all of those kinds of things.
But the fact that he was on the offensive so much, what does that say about the place that the NDP is and how much he was willing to risk?
Well, I mean, he's a good debater. He's been on the stage a few times before, and this was his first time actually debating those two because they've never done this before. So he has a sense that there is a lot at stake right now, and he wants to really make sure that people see that there is a clear choice for them in this election.
When you consider where the polls are right now, how the NDP has been doing, how difficult of a position are you guys in when you consider that there are a number of pollsters who are saying you may lose party status?
Yeah, I think that actually what we're seeing is that in the ridings that we hold right now, the incumbent ridings and some other ridings, we have a lot of strength on the ground. And it's traditionally been the case that the NDP support is there is a lot across the country, but it's also very concentrated in particular ridings. And in those ridings that we hold right now, people are very happy to have an NDP representative, somebody fighting for them in Parliament every day in Ottawa. And so I think that we're seeing that, you know, I would never say that I don't believe polls. But I will say that NDP strength is not always captured by some of that. And we saw that just most recently in the Ontario election, where all the predictions were that we were going to lose party status, our leader was going to lose her seat, et cetera, et cetera. None of that happened. We're still the official opposition. We elected 27 MPPs. And, you know, we see that everywhere in the country. We've got a lot of strength in ridings where people are used to having an NDP representative, and they know what value that brings to them. It got them dental care. It got them pharmacare. You know, it got them the supports that everybody needed, the income supports during the pandemic. So people know that when they have an NDP MP, that person is rooted in their community, is fighting for their community, and is effective at getting things done.
For tonight, just quickly in wrapping here, do we expect to see a leader once again, like last night, who seemingly has nothing left to lose?
I think he'll be strong. I think he's gonna really. I think he will go after Pierre Poilievre, because I think a lot of our voters, in particular, are very concerned about Pierre Poilievre. But I think more and more people are recognizing that it doesn't look like Pierre Poilievre is going to be successful in being the Prime Minister. And Mark Carney is very new, very untested. People don't really know that much about him, but he's appealing to a lot of people. And so I think that a lot of what Jagmeet has to do tonight is to sow doubt, to make people take a second look, to make people question whether or not they want to give this guy unbridled power, whether they're willing to give him a blank check with no checks and balances. And I think that he's going to have to make the case that a strong NDP is what will keep people from experiencing some of the cuts that Mark Carney is also talking about.
Okay, appreciate this. And Anne McGrath, NDP spokesperson, with me here, Vashi. She'll be watching the debate in there along with us. Send it back to you.
All right, thanks so much, Mike. That's our senior political correspondent, Mike LeCouture. And a note for everybody watching, we did request people from all of the campaigns to come talk to Mike. Anne is, or the NDP, I should say, is the one who made Anne available. Let's swing over to our Judy Trin, who has been tracking the Liberals and as well the crowds. If Jagmeet Singh, as Anne McGrath just said, is going to bring the fire tonight, will Mark Carney do the same?
I think he will have to, Vashi. I just wanted to point out something that happened. I'm not sure if the cameras caught it, but when Mark Carney arrived on his bus, he went over to greet supporters. And the supporters were standing obviously right next to Conservative supporters. And the Conservatives were attempting to drown out the Carney chants with what chant? Brookfield, Brookfield, Brookfield. So we can expect that that is what they are going to go after Mr. Carney with tonight. They are going to question whether or not there are conflicts of interest. They're going to question the tax havens. I think that yesterday, perhaps because of the fluency in French, the fact that Mr. Carney was not as fluent as the other leaders, he did not defend himself as much. We expect that in English that he will be defending himself, and he will have to. He'll defend against that, as well as the possibility of foreign interference, which was also another big chant that was out here also. So we're getting a sense of that from the ground level supporters as to what they want to see their leaders do, Vashi.
Okay, thanks so much, Judy. That's our Judy Trin. Just outside the building where the debate will take place, which happens to be the building right behind me. I'm here with Rachel Aiello and Abigail Beeman, who have also been tracking various campaigns. As Judy was talking, Rachel, I was thinking it is sort of peculiar that there wasn't like a gang up on Mark Carney, just given his sort of status as the front runner, which is a wild thing to even think about at this stage, but his status as the front runner. I wonder if that changes at all tonight, or it sounds like from what Anne was saying that there will still be a lot of focus from Mr. Singh on Mr. Poilievre.
Yeah, I think it's a challenge for Jagmeet Singh to find the balance there in wanting to go hard and draw contrast with Mark Carney, but not wanting to dissuade so many progressive voters that they would look at Poilievre. What is going to be interesting to me, I was actually just looking, our website just published some new Nanos numbers, a poll about public safety. And public safety and security is one of the debate topics tonight. And it noted that most Canadians feel more safe than they did 10 years ago, but the difference there is conservative voters. 59% of them were saying they feel somewhat less safe. So I will be curious to see specifically in that section where Poilievre goes with his lines of attack, and it'll be curious to see as well, to Judy's point about Brookfield, how much he wants to go on that, because sure, it is something I think most Canadians who've been following this election have some level of understanding of, but I'm not sure it is the defining issue that Canadians want to hear them all talk about tonight.
Yeah, just for everybody watching, the Brookfield issue is basically Mark Carney was the chair of Brookfield Asset Management for a couple of years, and it's come to light through this election, Abigail, through basically a lot of work by the NDP and the Conservatives that, and journalists as well, that some of the so-called assets or the companies or the business in Brookfield is registered to tax havens. So countries we have agreements with that allow for those companies to pay way less, or that company in this case to pay way less in taxes than they would in Canada. It's a legal practice, but Mr. Carney has not really been direct in answering questions about how ethical it is. And I think that strategically, even though I think Rachel's right, it's not like everybody knows what's going on this issue because it is very granular. But I think strategically, the fact that it has proven to be something that he gets bothered about is what might inform everybody going after it today, particularly in English, maybe.
Well, for sure. And I asked him about tax havens. Forget what day of the 26th it was now, but you could see in his answer, he was still, even though it had come up multiple times, seemingly so surprised or taken off guard. If you watch those 30 seconds over again and you see his ums and his ahs, he has not been able to formulate his response on that, especially in a way that captures the attention of voters. And even if they don't understand the ins and outs or don't care enough to follow the specific ins and outs of tax havens, when you see a leader who is incapable of answering that question directly, I think that's what sticks in people's minds.
Just quickly to follow up with you, because of Anne's comment about bringing the fire.
Yes.
I know that you were talking to people on the campaign who were saying that too. Like, do you think it's still primarily going to be directed at Mr. Poilievre, or will the fire be thrown Mr. Carney's way from Mr. Singh?
I think there will be fire thrown all around. And just to give you a sort of an inside look at how the NDP prepared for this debate, as I think many of us know, there are often actors or comms people, role players that take on the roles of the other opponents for the debate to get the leaders ready. And we were told that the person playing Mr. Poilievre was so in character because they want to prepare for all versions of which Mr. Poilievre that they may see on the debate stage, that he walked into this room full of NDP supporters, NDP debate team wearing an Axe the Tax t-shirt, and that really put it over the top for them. So right into character. They are ready to take on whatever form of Mr. Poilievre they get.
Some visuals there of Mr. Poilievre when he arrived about an hour ago here. All four leaders are here now. Do you anticipate, to what degree do you anticipate, Rachel, last word to you, Mr. Poilievre bringing the fire?
I would be surprised if he doesn't go a bit more feisty than we saw last night. And specifically, I think to try to get under Carney's skin would probably be the way it would happen. But we'll see, because the party keeps telling me, no, we want to show a positive version, a serious version. But, he has that instinct. So we'll see how that plays out.
We sure will. Very shortly, less than half an hour away. And we'll get your analysis and Abigail's, Judy's, and Mike's following the debate as well. We're going to take a quick break. Our extended coverage is back after that break. Stay right there. Take that shot live. Welcome back to a special and extended edition of Power Play. I'm here live tonight in Montreal, coming to you from just outside, or I should say the building that is just behind me will house all four party leaders for the federal debate. It is going to happen in just over 10 minutes from now. This is the only English language debate of the entire election, and it follows last night's French language debate. I am rejoined by the wonderful Scott Reed, Kathleen Monk, and Corey tonight to talk a little bit about that as we head into these final few moments. Nothing really changes in these. Like, everybody's set, right? They're just ready to walk out there.
No question, but it's a nerve-wracking time.
Oh, I can't imagine.
You don't want to be too close to your boss at this moment, because you can get a harsh word tossed your way if you are like, hey, don't forget, don't talk to me right now. You get a little bit of that.
Right. What are you going to be watching for 7 o'clock when this starts?
I'm really going to be watching Poilievre. Does he change strategy from last night? Does he move to a different gear? Does he, over the course of the debate, decide to go more aggressive? Really be watching to see what his strategy is. Is he just going to try to infomercial and say, listen, I'm a different guy and I can do this job, stick with me, give me your vote? Or does he turn on Carney and say, you're Captain Tax Haven and I'm going to beat you like a pinata?
There are a number of different issues, like 5 different issue sets that they're going to talk about. Yes, some of them involve Donald Trump and certainly the threat that we face there and the bigger economic threat. But a lot of them are about other stuff that used to matter a lot. It still does matter, but obviously that used to kind of rank above Donald Trump as an issue set. How important is it for people outside of Mark Carney to get in on those subjects and deliver some wins?
Oh, critically important. I mean, you saw actually Jagmeet Singh last night actually bring up the housing issue against Pierre. And I expect tonight he'll bring up the housing issue again, but this time turn his guns on Mr. Carney. He has to actually find a way to bring back some of that NDP vote that was from 2021 and bring it back home to New Democrats this time. They've drifted over to the Liberals, but that Liberal vote is still a little bit soft. It hasn't, been nailed down. And so basically, Jagmeet Singh has to prosecute the case, saying Mark Carney is the guy who just a few weeks ago was working for Brookfield and was buying up buildings, affordable, apartments, and hiking the rent on single moms. He's going to say that tonight, something in that vein. And do you want there not to be opposition to Carney's agenda? So he will make that case tonight. He will make it strongly. And I think he has to, because he has to bring back some of those Liberal voters that, aren't quite sure about Carney. And frankly, furthermore, he's going to make the case, I think, really that, do you want a House like we had in 1993 with Chrétien, where the Liberals won a massive majority and there was no opposition? And what did Chrétien do? He cut. Right? He cut a lot. And there was no opposition to that. And if there's not New Democrats in the House and the Liberals are only going to listen to the Conservatives, the whole agenda will move this way. And New Democrats have to stand there and be present, hopefully be the balance of power in Parliament. So that means a minority with a significant amount of New Democrats, so they can actually shape that agenda.
What do you think about the prospect of a minority right now, Corey?
I think it's significant. It's most likely to be a Liberal minority if it's a minority government, but I think there's a lot of distance that the Conservatives would have to get to go from minority to majority for themselves. So if there's going to be a Conservative government at the end of this election, I think it's much more likely that it's a minority than a majority based on the information we have now. But I would, those are the two options on the minority side. I think we're still polling in Liberal majority territory when you look at the regional breakdowns. But tonight is we're all here because it could change tonight, and that's what everyone's going to be watching. I think the strategy points that these guys made are good. We'll see how combative everybody wants to be.
And you're looking live right now inside the room where the debate will take place. All 4 leaders have now made their way inside, giving us a glimpse of where they will be standing. And I would note some maybe the most significant differences. Mr. Poilievre and Mr. Carney Scott are actually next to each other rather than at kind of the tail end as they were last time. I'm wondering if there's anything to be said for the prospect of more engagement, direct engagement between the two because of that physical positioning.
I would bet on that. And the other thing, particularly picking up on what Kathleen said, that if we can expect Singh to be more aggressive with Mr. Carney, then you look at this set and you say, now, there he is, poor fella, a petal of roses between 2 thorns. And they're going to be both. So, but it is awkward. Last night he was at the end, and I do think that advantaged him, as we said earlier. And if he's stuck in the middle, then you sort of got the tennis match thing going on, where you're like, ping-ponging back and forth, and it'll be harder for him to hold the space and make the energy all his own.
Yeah, I was thinking even last night, it was kind of striking the degree to which Kathleen, and I think we mentioned this earlier, like there wasn't more of a gang up on Mark Carney. I would have thought, even if it's a competitive race, his numbers alone as preferred prime minister that is his big advantage. That is the Liberals' big advantage right now, how far ahead he is of everybody else. And yet that didn't really occur. There wasn't like a coalescing, a ganging up at all on Mark Carney.
Yeah, I mean, and so maybe that will happen. I don't think it'll happen tonight, but we have seen in Ontario in the campaign that Corey just ran with Mr. Ford, he was ganged up on, and he just took all the bullets and just kept on smiling.
Yeah.
And so there is a way to survive that kind of fire.
And Corey, maybe you can talk a little bit about that, Corey, and sort of what the strategy, like, do you go in thinking I'm the front runner, so that's going to be the case?
I would be taking no risks if I were Mark Carney tonight.
Yep.
And and insofar as you have anything bad to say about anybody, I'd say it about Donald Trump. And I just think you just let it all bounce off you. You try to look prime ministerial. You try to let, the more the dogs are barking at you, the more you just look straight at the camera and try to maintain your cool.
And is the converse true for everybody else, Scott?
It may well be. And I'll go back to Poilievre. I think Kathleen is correct. And Singh's strategy is not to focus as much on Poilievre, but rather to focus his fire on Carney tonight. Well, then Poilievre may say to himself, all right, okay, now that's good. Now I can actually not worry so much about the teardown of Carney. Someone else is going to take care of the dirty work for me, and I can focus on it. Except we'll see how much human nature takes over in the cut and the thrust of it, because I've never known Pierre Poilievre to let anyone do his dirty work for him. He always pushes them out of the way and says, no, please me first. So that'll be interesting to watch the real nature of people, because it does bring out your sort of the inner you when you're under the lights and under the pressure.
If you're just joining us now, you're looking live inside the room. We're in just 5 minutes time. Those 4 men will face off against each other. They are, of course, each leading a political party. This is the only English language debate. Kathleen, could you talk a bit about the sort of moment that we're in, and the fact that we head into this long weekend and then into the final week of the campaign? Like, we're already 4/5 of the way done.
Yeah, it seems so long. It's still so much more to go, really. But I think this weekend is critical, and I'll reflect on a campaign that I was involved with in 2011. There was also a long weekend, an Easter weekend during that campaign, and those that often, families return, they gather, they have conversations, and really the campaigns take their foot off the gas a little bit because of the holiday weekend, and actually, people's views on the leaders start to solidify. And that's what's going to happen this weekend. And I think it was Nick Nanos who said it earlier, that he's really going to start looking for the trend line like Tuesday, Wednesday of next week. And that's when we'll know how the debate shook out and how people are feeling. And at that point, it's hard to change. So tonight is really the last night to really get something into people's brains before they go away for the holiday weekend.
I thought the other thing that struck me last night, Corey, was the lack of, like, some debates you watch and everyone's just talking right to the camera all the time, right? And last night there was a lot, not necessarily with each other, but with the moderator more. Do you think there'll be more talking to Canadians tonight, particularly because, not to take anything away from the French debate, but you're aiming your comments to a much smaller segment of the population. You're talking the whole country tonight.
Right, and for many of them not in their first language.
Yes.
So I think there'll be more engagement. Pagan's a very experienced moderator. He's done this a lot of times before. So we'll see. I think the standard thing is to look at the camera, less at each other. You don't want, especially if you're Carney, you don't want to create those confrontation moments. But we'll see. Like, there really hasn't been much change in the polls in the last few weeks, and I know it's always good, like when there's a 1 or 2 point change in the tracking polling, to talk about what happened this week that's changed it. But folks at home, like a 1 or 2 point change in the tracking polling means nothing's changed. It's just twitching in the margin of error, and that's really what we've seen for the last 3 weeks. Is there's been virtually no change in the polls. So, I think it'll be Tuesday before we know whether there's any sort of change in trajectory, and 1 or 2 points one way or the other in a change in trajectory.
Well, that's right. Both Kathleen and Corey are right that we won't really know if today mattered until Tuesday or so. But I'll say this emphatically. I have always hated holiday weekends during a campaign.
Why?
Because you don't know what's going on out there.
But
people are slicing Easter ham and they're talking, and you think, you know what? We did fine in that debate. It wasn't an event. Everything's cruising. And then you find out, sorry, actually, we didn't cruise. We crashed. And you don't learn until it's damn near too late to fix it.
You love them when you have momentum, though, because we went in 2011, we went into that weekend with momentum, and it just built. So you can, if you're having momentum, if you had a good night, if someone comes out of here tonight with a really good win, then, it'll be great.
Half of the votes in this election by Tuesday morning will
be
cast. Will have been cast.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, that's the other thing. It's not just a long weekend, it's the start of advance.
It's advanced poll. So 4 days advanced poll voting are starting tomorrow, and the last day is Monday of that. If it's similar to other elections, half of the votes will have been cast by Tuesday morning. Yeah. And your ability to change in the rest of that electorate, now you're only vying for half the votes. So, like, it's, I think this is the last big important event. It's happening right before the voting starts. We're not going to know until, probably early next week whether it's had any effect.
And the campaigns don't know more than we do either. I mean, they have their own internal tracking, but there is literally going to be a giant national game of kiss, marry, kill all weekend long, and there's not much you can do to get into the middle of it. There really isn't.
There is, though, and we're just in the final seconds here, 6% of the population totally undecided, 20% open to changing their vote. How big, how important is that tonight?
Maybe. I'm not as convinced that there's a lot of movement to be had. And Corey and I have talked about this. I think this thing is set, unless something tonight disturbs it.
Well, something could. Corey tonight, Kathleen Monk, and Scott Reed. That is why we are here, and we will be here at the conclusion of the debate as well. The debate gets underway in just a few seconds. We're going to carry the full thing live for you. 2 hours. All four leaders will square off against each other inside that building just behind me. And then we are back with 2 hours of post-game analysis immediately following the debate. We'll join you then. Let's take a watch in live.